The Pentagon has come out and they have confirmed that airstrikes have killed the head of ISIS in Libya, as well as a senior commander in Somalia of al-Shabaab. So two different groups. Now, Jose, like always, we hear about these a few months after they actually happen, yes. Right? So it takes a little while for the Pentagon and our intelligence to kind of make sure that we're right about this. And this time we're talking about Abu Nabil. Let's start with the ISIS leader in Libya first. They have confirmed he is the one that was killed in an airstrike of a car. He was traveling in a car. And this is, I think, huge because his death really reduces the ability for ISIS to be recruiting all around North Africa, but especially within Libya, where ISIS, unfortunately, because of the power vacuum, is gaining a foothold in that region.
Yeah, I mean, Nabil was the one that most of the time was behind the videos that came out of Libya. He was famous for the video that he's supposed to be the spokesperson after the 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians were beheaded in that very famous, one of the very first massively public massacres that ISIS committed, and when it really started gearing up in terms of recognition around the world. So I think this is a big strike, and finally we see that the policy is starting to shift and realizing and accepting the fact that the cells outside of Syria and Iraq are also very important to tackle.
Yeah, and ISIS has cells which spread much wider than other groups like al-Shabaab, for example. Let's talk about al-Shabaab for a little bit. This leader, this senior commander who was killed, his nickname is Ukash. Now, this might affect things a little differently for al-Shabaab because he's a senior commander within al-Shabaab, which is more centralized. Then you have ISIS, which is kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. So I think when you see a big leader like this coming down, it means a lot more for a group like al-Shabaab as opposed to ISIS for that reason. Now, if you're not familiar too much with al-Shabaab, they are in the east of Africa, in the Horn of Africa specifically. Their stronghold is within Somalia. They were the ones who came out and took responsibility for the very bloody, atrocious attacks at Garissa University in Kenya. Correct. That killed almost 150 people. 148 were killed in those attacks. So very, very substantial blows to both of these organizations.
Correct. And these two, at the same time, contrast and give an example of how ISIS is being so successful. Like other terrorist organizations, everyone wants to bring foreign fighters, but ISIS has been the only one that has been successful doing so, being able to not only draw them to Syria and Iraq, but also find supporters outside. Most of the terrorist organizations, they gather support regionally, and they have a central command. Now that's what makes ISIS so dangerous.
Yeah, and you know, these attacks, these airstrikes, I should say, show us something else too. Look, the first one that killed Abu Nabil, that was in November, that airstrike from a F-16 fighter jet that belonged to the US. That was carried into the north of Libya, okay? And then just a few weeks later, we see this attack on Ukash of al-Shabaab all the way in Somalia. So it kind of shows you how far spread this fight against terrorism is. I personally didn't even know we were routinely carrying out airstrikes against al-Shabaab in Somalia in the first place. I didn't know that. We tend to focus on Syria and Iraq, but apparently it's much more than that.